A very good evening. This is from Radilearn, a platform of interactive radiology teaching, which we had started, but for a long time, not a long time, for a certain interval of time, it was closed. And we start the session. There's a series of lectures, and we are honored to have Dr. Vaishali, a very famous MSK teacher and very famous known face in MSK radiology in India as well as outside, and a very, very good friend of mine. And I particularly chose Vaishali for this lecture because in a ICRI lecture, she had given this lecture just after my shoulder session, and it was beautiful. And so even if people who don't know ABCD of MRI anatomy of elbow, sometimes people are usually used to knee and shoulder. Very few people actually are interested, rather they are scared of rest of the joints. So today after this session, you will understand how easy it is, and you will jump into reporting MRI elbows without getting scared. All you have to do is whatever she teaches, you have to go through the proper textbooks and read about it so that it gets imprinted in your brain, and then start practicing it in your day-to-day practice. So over to you, Vaishali. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Srijita. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. I'm always happy to teach. And for all the residents who are listening to today's session, I have tried to make it as simple as possible for you. And let's hope that, as Srijita says, that after today's session, whenever you encounter a case of MRI of elbow in your daily clinical practice, you will be excited and looking forward to tackling it and diagnosing the patient's problem. So now let's get started. So I've broken up my talk into these sessions, which will be our learning objectives. And first, before going to the MR anatomy, I'll explain you the normal anatomy, which we will then later on apply to all the MR images. And before starting the MR anatomy, we'll just also briefly touch upon the technical aspects, so you're familiar with the way a scan is obtained before finally heading towards the MR anatomy. So it's a long session, and I hope you've had your tea, coffee, and you'll be awake throughout the session. When we talk about anatomy, again, I've divided into these few sections. So we'll talk about the bones and the joint first, then come to the muscles and tendons, followed by ligaments, nerves, and bursae. So let's start with the bones. While I was making this presentation, I came to know a very interesting name of the elbow joint. It's also called a trochogynglimus joint. And if you break up this complicated sounding word, trochogynglimus, so the hinge component of the joint is also the gynglimus component, and the pivoting component is also the trochoid component. So what do I mean by these? The hinge component, that component which allows you to flex and extend your elbow. That sort of movement is happening at the ulnohumeral joint. So that is the hinge component. And the pivoting component, that is which enables you to do pronation and supination, that is mainly by the proximal radioulnar joint and also by the radiohumeral joint, which is the trochoid component. So you understand that there are basic movements which are happening at your elbow joint, and they include flexion extension as well as pronation and supination. Now let's have a look at the at some of the images. So this, when you see the distal humerus, it has this large bony projection on the medial side. So this is your pointer that this large projection, since this is the medial epicondyle, so that you are on the medial aspect. On the lateral aspect, the projection is smaller, that is the lateral epicondyle. And the distal end which you see, this is a spool, this spool shaped structure which you see articulating with the ulna. This is known as the trochlea, and this if you remember, if you have seen people winding thread around this thing, it looks kind of like that. So this is the trochlea which is articulating with the ulna, and this other structure is the capitellum which is articulating with the radial head. So on the humerus you have medial epicondyle, lateral epicondyle, trochlea and capitellum, and this is articulating with the radius and ulna. With the radius and ulna, this is the proximal ulna, this is the radius which has the radial head, neck and the tuberosity, right? Now, if we have a look from the posterior aspect, this is the fossa, the olecranon process of the ulnar goose, so known as the olecranon fossa. Again, as I said, easy to identify which side is medial by this large projection, which is the medial epicondyle. So medial epicondyle, then you have the trochlea, you have the capitellum and smaller lateral epicondyle. And if we see the ulna, the projection which is upwards, which is going into this olecranon fossa here, is the olecranon process. The other flattened kind of projection below is the coronoid process, and both of these together will form a large notch that is called the trochlear notch. If we see the side view, so this again is the radial head which is articulating with the capitellum. This is the ulna. The olecranon process has gone in the olecranon fossa. And this here is the proximal radio-ulnar joint. So there is a radial notch on the proximal ulna where attaches the radial head, and around this radial head goes a ligament which is the annular ligament, which keeps it fit, snugly fit over here in the radial notch. After bones, we come to the muscles and tendons. So on the medial side, we have the common flexor tendon. On the lateral side, we have common extensor tendon. Anteriorly, you have biceps and brachialis. And posteriorly, we have the triceps and the anconeus. Now let's discuss all of these. These are some beautiful illustrations. Let's see the one from the anterior aspect first. So again, way to identify this projection here is the medial epicondyle, and this is the site of attachment of the common flexor tendon. So from the common flexor tendon, you get the pronators and the flexor muscles. So medially we have pronator teres, then we have flexor carpi ulnaris, we have palmaris longus, flexor digitorum superficialis, and flexor carpi ulnaris. Now, what is this structure which is covering this flexor pronator muscle mass? This here is anteriorly is the biceps tendon. There is an aponeurotic expansion of this tendon, which is known as the lacertus fibrosus, which covers this flexor muscle mass and it blends with the antebrachial fascia. Now, what is the importance of this lacertus fibrosus? See, sometimes you have biceps tendon rupture, but if this lacertus fibrosus is intact, the tendon will not be retracted proximally. But if this lacertus fibrosus is also gone, then there will be significant proximal retraction of the biceps tendon. Now let's look at it. Let's have a look from the posterior aspect. So this is the lateral epicondyle, which is the site of attachment of the common extensor tendon, right? So from the medial side, you are having common flexor tendon. From the lateral side, you have the common extensor tendon. Now remember that there is a muscle that is extensor carpi radialis longus that takes origin from the supracondylar ridge, and it's not originating from this common extensor tendon. From the common extensor tendon, you have the extensor carpi radialis brevis, the extensor digitorum and digiti minimi, and the extensor carpi ulnaris. So now we have talked about common flexor tendon as well as common extensor tendon. Now see another image. This will clarify things further. This is the large medial epicondyle, and here from this is the common flexor tendon. So again, you can revise. We have pronator teres and flexor carpi radialis, palmaris longus, flexor carpi ulnaris, and flexor digitorum superficialis. And another diagram from the lateral aspect. As I told you, the extensor carpi radialis longus is not a component of the common extensor tendon. It arises from the supracondylar ridge. And what from here, the largest thing you will see is the extensor carpi radialis brevis, then extensor digitorum and digiti minimi, and then the extensor carpi ulnaris. Now coming to the ligaments. Ligamentous anatomy is complex, but okay, we'll simplify and take this up. So you can again divide it into ulnar and radial parts, right? Let's take the ulnar part first. So the ulnar collateral ligament, which is medially, has three bundles: anterior bundle, posterior bundle, and a transverse bundle which connects the anterior and posterior bundles. So these are, stabilizers. They provide stability to the elbow joint, and they are restraints against valgus stress. Then on the lateral side, we have radial collateral ligament, lateral ulnar collateral ligament, and the annular ligament. So they also provide stability and they are restraints against varus stress. Now we'll discuss these one by one. See, again we focus on the medial epicondyle. So from the medial epicondyle towards the coronoid process, we have the anterior bundle of the ulnar collateral ligament. This is functionally the most important for stability. There is another bundle which goes from the medial epicondyle to the olecranon process, that is the posterior bundle, which forms the floor of the cubital tunnel. And there's a third bundle, that is a transverse bundle, which is just connecting these two and is not functionally important. So we'll not be talking about this. On the lateral side, again coming to the lateral epicondyle, anteriorly we have the radial collateral ligament, which inferiorly blends with the fibers of the annular ligament, which is encircling the radial head. And posteriorly, we have the lucal or the lateral ulnar collateral ligament, which will go and attach to the supinator crest of the ulna. And amongst these three, the most important is the lateral ulnar collateral ligament, which will provide stability and will act as a restraint against varus stress. Now coming to the nerves in the region of the elbow. So you can see by these three names itself that ulnar, median and radial are all around in this region. And suppose there is trauma in this region, then any of these nerves can be involved. Let's understand this anatomy with the help of some diagrams. So coming to the ulnar nerve first. So ulnar nerve in the distal arm is on the medial side posteriorly, and then it goes behind the medial epicondyle and enters the cubital tunnel. After passing through the cubital tunnel, it passes distally between the two heads of the flexor carpi ulnaris. That is the humeral head and the ulnar head. So it can get entrapped anywhere along its course here. Now coming to the radial nerve. So the radial nerve, which was initially posterior in the arm, now it has come anteriorly, and after coming anteriorly, it will divide into two branches. It will divide into a superficial branch, which will be going in the anterior compartment along with the radial artery, and it will divide into a posterior branch, which is also known as the posterior introitious nerve, which will pass through the supinator tunnel. It has a motor function to the muscles of the extensor compartment. So this radial nerve can get entrapped over here also in the supinator tunnel or just proximal to it. Last, coming to the median nerve. So the median nerve is on the medial side. In the distal arm, it is medial to the brachial artery, and then it will course distally and in front of the arm, and then here it will pass between the two heads of the pronator teres. See, even if it's sounding very difficult to you, just hear it out patiently and you'll be able to apply it once you start seeing cases like this of nerve entrapments. Sometimes there is a spur on the distal part of the medial humerus, and from this spur there is a ligamentous structure called the Struther's ligament, which extends from this spur or the supracondylar process to the medial epicondyle, and the nerve can get entrapped here also, and it can get entrapped here between the two heads of the pronator teres. So this is how the nerves are coursing in the region of the elbow joint. So if anyone has a trauma, then any of these nerves, depending upon the site of the trauma, can be no doubt involved. Next, coming to the bursae. So most of you might have just heard about the olecranon bursa, which is superficial to the olecranon process. But there are many other bursae also. There can be a bursa beneath the triceps tendon, which is the subtendinous bursa, within the substance of the tendon. And there's a bursa called the bicipito-radial bursa, which is between the biceps tendon and its insertion on the radial tuberosity. So basically, these bursae, they enable smooth frictionless movement. There are a number of other bursae also, but I don't think there's any need to dwell into it too much. Just remember that in different kinds of inflammatory arthropathies, sometimes these bursae, they get distended, and you should be able to identify that this is a case of bursitis and not confuse with something else. Now coming to the stabilizers of the elbow joint. So there are static and dynamic stabilizers. So static stabilizers includes the joint itself and the joint capsule along with the ligamentous complex. And what are the dynamic stabilizers? So muscles which are causing the elbow joint like brachialis, biceps, triceps and coneus, they all become the dynamic stabilizers. Now, for any one of you who is sleeping, just time to wake up. Maybe can have some water or tea or coffee. The next part is where we start talking about MR. Now, before going to the anatomy, let's just spend a minute or so on talking about the technical parameters. Now, what is the patient position for an elbow scan? See, the optimal patient position is a Superman kind of position where you have the arm above the head, right? And this position gives you good contrast resolution, good field homogeneity, better signal to noise ratio. But remember that sometimes patient might have a problem with their elbow and they may not be able to, do this kind of Superman position. It might be difficult and painful for them. So in that case, the option left with you is just ask them to be supine and bring the elbow in the center of the magnet, and then they can, undergo the scan with the forearm supine. As far as coils are concerned, if you have a dedicated coil, good. Otherwise, you can use a flex coil. For the field of view, I'll just explain it with the next slide. So we'll talk about that. And as far as planes are concerned, obviously we'll do it in all the three planes, axial, coronal, and sagittal. The choice of sequences at my institute include, we do proton density FATSAT in all the three planes. And then I prefer to use an axial and coronal T1 and T2s as well. So that gives me a fairly good view of the elbow joint and a good set of sequences to play with. And sometimes if I have any doubt or there is a difficulty in assessing these smaller ligaments and there is suspicion of ligamentous injury, in those selected cases I prefer to go ahead with a 3D proton density as well, which can be reconstructed in different planes. Now, how do you plan for the elbow joint? You can take an axial localizer and then along a line which is parallel to the medial and lateral epicondyles, we can plan our coronal slices. So then you can go from anterior to posterior parallel to this line, and you can get the sagittals perpendicular to this coronals. So that's how you can cover the entire elbow, and it's preferable to go an inch or so above the olecranon fossa and about an inch below the radial tuberosity. So you get a complete coverage of all the tendons as well, especially the biceps tendon. Now coming to the MR anatomy part. So about the first part of the presentation we have done with the anatomy, and we've briefly talked about the technical parameters. Now we will start with the MR anatomy part, right? So just concentrate. So towards your left we have T1 weighted images and right we have PD fat saturated images. Now this is a coronal section. This is the medial aspect and this is the lateral aspect, and this will be same for all the coronal images that I show you. Now what do we see over here? We see a muscle signal intensity in the center, and these are the muscles of the flexor muscles of the anterior compartment. We see a tendon here which of course is seen here also, but if you want to differentiate between biceps and brachialis and you're not able to do so in this selected image, we'll differentiate them in the further axial sections that we see. This bunch of muscles on the medial side, as I told you, would be coming from the medial epicondyle, so they are the common flexor muscles, and this on the lateral side would be the common extensor muscles. Now this joint that starts coming into view, here we see the radial head articulating with the capitellum, and same here the radial head articulating with the capitellum. This is the articular cartilage. So what joint is this? This is the radiocapitellar joint. Again, we can see the muscles, extensor muscles and the flexor muscles on the medial aspect. Now, what do you see in this image? We have the distal end of the humerus. This is the capitellum, which is articulating with the radial head. This is the proximal ulna, which is articulating with the trochlea. So we have the radiocapitellar joint and the ulnohumeral joint, ulnotrochlear joint. So on the lateral aspect, if you focus, what do you see here? We see the common extensor tendon, and deep to that we see fibers of the radial collateral ligament. So the common extensor tendon and some fibers deep to it are those of the radial collateral ligament. On the medial side, we are having this common. This is the flexor group of muscles. Now we go further posteriorly, you will find a nice hypointense line which is extending from the medial epicondyle, and it is attaching to this sublime tubercle on the coronoid process of ulna. So this is your anterior bundle of the ulnar collateral ligament. As I told you, the anterior bundle is the functionally most important component of the ulnar collateral ligament complex, and it is the primary restraint against valgus stress. Here are the common flexor muscles and the common flexor tendon attaching to the medial epicondyle. Here you can see again the radial head and a hint of a ligament, which I'll show you in the next slide better, which is the lateral ulnar collateral ligament, and this is going towards the supinator crest of the ulna. This is a better image. See, this ligament is going, it is cradling the radial head and getting attached to the supinator crest of the ulna. This is the primary restraint against varus stress. This is known as the lateral ulnar collateral ligament. Further posteriorly, this fossa over here, this is the olecranon fossa, and in this you can see nicely that the olecranon process is fitting in, right? This is the olecranon process, and you see a nice tendon which is attaching to the olecranon process. What is this tendon? This is the triceps tendon. So it normally has these striations. It is normally having this look, and don't confuse this for a tear. So while I'm talking about the triceps tendon, let me tell you that the triceps, meaning three heads, the triceps has three heads. It has long head, lateral head, and medial head. So what happens is that the long head and the lateral head, they join to form this tendon, which is attaching to the olecranon process. But the fibers of the medial head, they have a direct muscular attachment onto the olecranon process. So sometimes even again in this case, if there's a tendon tear, because the medial head is intact and only this triceps tendon component is torn, which is formed by the combination of these tendons of long and lateral heads, there may not be significant retraction. Now let's come to the axial plane. Now axial plane has much more action going on. You can see a lot of stuff. So let's identify the bone first. This is your distal humerus. Everyone's clear with that. This you can see that there are voids, there are small vessels over here. So what is this? This is the neurovascular bundle. And which nerve will be here? Which artery will be here? It will be the brachial artery with the venae comitentes, and the median nerve will be here. This tendinous structure which you see in front, this is the biceps tendon, and this big muscle mass that you see over here on the anterior aspect of the distal humerus, which is nice and homogeneous in these images, is the brachialis. Posteriorly, what do you see? Posteriorly, you see the triceps and the triceps tendon. Now you can see nerve on this posterior aspect on the medial side, and that is the ulnar nerve. And I will take it in the next slide. So this muscle on the lateral side over here is the brachioradialis, and deep to that is the radial nerve. Here medially is the median nerve, and posteriorly we have the ulnar nerve. So you can see that all these nerves, they are kind of intermediate signal intensity on the T1 images, and they are mildly hyperintense on the fat saturated images. Let's talk about the muscles again. So what muscle is this between which there is the median nerve? So this is the brachialis and the pronator teres, and here this is the brachioradialis and the brachialis, between which lies the radial nerve. Now if these nerves are enlarged, then in these corresponding locations on the fat saturated images, they would be enlarged and bright, but because they are not so enlarged or bright, you don't see them well on the fat saturated images, except slightly the ulnar nerve. Now another important thing over here is this fat signal intensity in T1 on the anterior aspect and the posterior aspect. So these are the fat pads, because you see you're not getting any signal here, the signal is suppressed. So coronoid fat pad is anterior and olecranon fat pad is posterior. So what is the importance of these fat pads? In fact, they are very important on the X-rays also. Why? Because this displacement of these fat pads on the radiographs makes you suspicious about the possibility of joint effusion. Why? Because if there is fluid here, it will displace these fat pads. And displacement of this olecranon fat pad, when you see this on the X-ray, it is known as the Sale sign. And normally this coronoid fat pad, it's not even visualized. And if this is visualized due to displacement, again you think of joint effusion. Now, if we see anteriorly, again we have the biceps tendon over here. Coming to the next section here, this is the biceps tendon which I was showing you. And here you can see a thin dark band which is extending from the biceps tendon and coursing medially to cover the flexor pronator muscle mass. So what structure is this? This is the lacertus fibrosus. I already told you while talking about the anatomy that this was very important in helping to keep the biceps tendon in place even if the biceps tendon was torn. But suppose this structure is torn, then there is retraction of the biceps. Now again, if we go medial and lateral, so on the medial side, you have the flexor group of muscles. On the lateral side, you have the extensor group of muscles. Here we have the radial nerve. Here we have the median nerve. And posterior to the medial epicondyle, we have the ulnar nerve. Now, coming to the this space which is known as the cubital tunnel. So, if you focus on this nerve, there is some surrounding fat, right? And the nerve is not looking compressed. This is a healthy volunteer. What structure, band-like structure, covers this ulnar nerve in the cubital tunnel? This is known as the Osborn's ligament or the cubital tunnel retinaculum, which is a fibroaponeurotic expansion of the flexor carpi ulnaris. And now the important thing is, at the base of the tunnel, what is this structure? This is the posterior bundle of the ulnar collateral ligament. So I have told you repeatedly now that the UCL has 3 bundles, but we are not talking about the transverse bundle because it's not really important. So the anterior bundle I showed you attaching to the sublime tubercle of ulna. Now this is the posterior bundle, but of these, the anterior and posterior, always remember the anterior bundle is most important for maintaining the stability on the medial aspect and against valgus stress. So here again I repeat, we have the medial epicondyle, the ulnar nerve, the cubital tunnel retinaculum or the Osborn's ligament, and the posterior bundle of the ulnar collateral ligament. Laterally, see this soft tissue that you're seeing over here is part of the anconeus muscle, but you don't have any muscle here which is compressing the ulnar nerve. Sometimes there is an accessory anconeus muscle on the medial aspect which results in compression of the ulnar nerve and patients present with ulnar neuropathy, and that is known as the anconeus epitrochlearis. One more thing I think I've left anteriorly is we've talked about the biceps tendon and the lacertus fibrosus, but here now we start seeing that the tendon of the brachialis is also formed. So this is the brachialis and the brachialis tendon which you can see. Here again you can nicely see the lacertus fibrosus. This is therefore the biceps tendon. Deeper one is the brachialis tendon. This is the distal humerus. Here again posterior to the medial epicondyle you can see the ulnar nerve nicely. This is the anconeus muscle which is on the posterior aspect. Medially we have the flexor muscles and laterally we have the extensors, and here again this is the neurovascular bundle. Medially we have the median nerve, laterally the radial nerve, and I've already shown you the ulnar nerve. Now wrapping around the radial head you can see some fibers of the annular ligament. Here anteriorly we see the biceps and the brachialis. Now these are going towards their respective insertions. So the biceps is going towards the radial tuberosity, and where is the brachialis tendon going? It's going towards the cornoid process of the ulna. Here again the common flexor and the common extensor muscles. And now what we have over here? Now the ulnar nerve has come out of the cubital tunnel and now it is lying in the tunnel between the two heads of the flexor carpi ulnaris. So one is the humeral head and the other is the ulnar head of the flexor carpi ulnaris. So median nerve, because it's so superficial, it's commonly encountered in cases of entrapments. Most commonly you will find median nerve obviously at the wrist, that is the carpal tunnel syndrome. But the second number you will encounter will be ulnar nerve only, and that the compression of this nerve in the cubital tunnel, that's called the cubital tunnel syndrome. So carpal tunnel and cubital tunnel syndromes are the most common nerve entrapment syndromes which you will encounter in daily clinical practice. Now as we go further distally, here again same thing, we have the flexor muscles, we have the extensor muscles, the radial head, the ulna, and in this image, if you see, there is a catenaceous kind of structure which will attach from here towards the supinator crest of ulna, and that will be the lateral ulnar collateral ligament, which is important for posterolateral stability. Rest all we've already seen, but let's repeat again. This is the brachialis tendon and the deeper one is the this is the biceps tendon, and the deeper one here is the brachialis, which is going towards its insertion onto the ulna. And now here we'll find that the biceps tendon has attached to the radial tuberosity and the brachialis has attached to the ulna. And these are again the flexor group of muscles, the extensor group of muscles, and this muscle which is encircling the radial head, this is the supinator. Posteriorly, here we have anconeus and other extensor group of muscles, and on the medial side we have the flexor carpi ulnaris. Now starting with the sagittal plane. So in the sagittal plane, again, if we start from the medial aspect, what you will see is the common flexor group of muscles which will be attaching via the common flexor tendon to the medial epicondyle. Here we see that it is the trochlea which has now started coming in view. Anteriorly, this is the brachialis muscle. You can see the biceps tendon as well, and these are all the flexor group of muscles. Posteriorly, we can see part of the triceps. Now again nicely see, we can see the biceps tendon, and this is the brachialis. So brachialis myotendinous junction is inferior, whereas that of the biceps is much superior. So you see the biceps tendon anteriorly. Suppose you don't see this structure anteriorly and there's a lot of edema in this region, then what do you have to suspect? That there's a tendon rupture. So biceps tendon, brachialis, and here you have the ulnohumeral articulation. So this is the olecranon process, this is the trochlear notch, this is the coronoid process. Here again in sagittal, you can very nicely see the fat pads. So on anterior side, you see the coronoid fat pad, and posteriorly you see the olecranon fat pad. Here we also see the attachment of the triceps tendon onto the olecranon process. Now we come towards the radiocapitellar articulation. We can see the articular cartilage, the radial head, the capitellum, and again the biceps as well. And this is part of the ulna that we were seeing. The olecranon process is going inside the olecranon fossa. The radiocapitellar articulation is seen nicely over here. And we see that there is this small area where there is a defect in the articular cartilage. So this is not a true defect, or this is not an osteochondral lesion. This is a place where there is normally a lack of articular cartilage. So don't mistake it for an osteochondral lesion. And lastly, once you go towards the lateral most aspect, this is the common extensor muscle mass which will be attaching via the common extensor tendon to the lateral epicondyle. So that's like, we've slowly reached, almost reached our goal, and now we are coming to the variants. We've done with the anatomy, then we've talked about the technical parameters, then we have talked about the MR anatomy in all the different planes, axial, coronal, as well as sagittal. Now let me show you some normal variants so that you don't confuse them with pathology. Next week after my lecture, you'll be having another wonderful MSK radiologist, Dr. Chaitali, who will be talking about all the pathologies. So I want to just show you some of the variants so that you don't confuse them for any pathologies of the elbow joint. So these are some important variants. One is the pseudo defect of the capitellum. So this is an area which is normally devoid of articular cartilage, as I was telling you. So the articular cartilage is coming here, but this area is devoid of the articular cartilage, but do not confuse this with an osteochondral lesion. Next is the trochlear ridge. So as I told you, this is the olecranon process, this is the coronoid process, and in between these two, there is a notch called the trochlear notch. At this, almost the mid-level of this notch, there's a bony ridge, which is called the trochlear ridge. But don't mistake this for a loose body. Here also there's no cartilage, but don't think that this is a loose body. This is a normal ridge of bone, which is called the trochlear ridge. This is the supracondylar process, which I have already told you when I was talking about the median nerve. This ridge is known as the supracondylar process. It's about a few centimeters proximal to the medial epicondyle, and sometimes there's a ligament connecting this bony projection to the medial epicondyle called ligament of Struthers, beneath which the median nerve can get entrapped. And this is how it looks like on the MR. So don't confuse this with any abnormal lesion, right? So what would be the difference between this and an osteochondroma? So in an osteochondroma, you see, the osteochondroma will be having corticomedullary continuity with the parent bone. Is this having any continuity? No, it's not having any continuity. It's a separate bony projection, right? And also, what do osteochondromas do? Do they point toward the joint or away from the joint? They will point away from the joint. And this is doing what? It's doing the opposite thing. It's pointing towards the joint. So that's important. Now, there are some accessory muscles. Of these two, Anconius epitrochlearis and Ganser. See, this Ganser one is not really common, and I have myself never encountered it. But because I was reading about it, so I've included it. It's an accessory head of the FPL, I think, and this is not very common. But the other thing which you really need to know is the Anconius epitrochlearis, which can be a source of compression of the ulnar nerve in the cubital tunnel, and it can cause clinical ulnar neuropathy. So this you need to be familiar with, that if there's an accessory muscle causing compression of the ulnar nerve in the cubital tunnel, then it's an Anconius epitrochlearis. Because the normal Anconius that you see, that is on the lateral aspect. Another thing is a lateral synovial fringe or a lateral plica. This is an embryological remnant. Normally you see it is not symptomatic. It may be there, but it's not symptomatic. But in some cases it becomes thickened and inflamed, and it can cause problems on this lateral aspect of the joint. And in that case, you need to be sure that you're dealing with a lateral plica, because clinically, pain on this side can be confused for common extensor pathology. So you need to differentiate that no, the common extensor tendon is okay, but it is the inflammation of the lateral plica which is responsible for the patient's pain on the lateral aspect. Now I've finished with all the MR anatomy as well as the variants, and we'll do a quick revision. So these are really very, very easy questions that I've kept, and that is only to encourage you that you're able to identify everything. So just go for this, and wherever you have options, just answer in the chat box or whatever by raising your hands. Srijita, are you there? Can somebody tell me what answers
I am
these
there.
people are giving?
Okay, I am
Okay,
there.
great.
Is
Okay.
the first, let me find out the chat box. Shubhrato, where is the chat box where they can write the answer?
Yes, ma'am.
Kundan?
Ulnar NB.
Acha, they are writing ulnar nerve.
Yeah, that's great. So what is this structure posterior to the medial epicondyle? It's the ulnar nerve. Great.
Kasturi Rokshit, very good.
Okay. Identify this structure. So these are very simple ones. But
Head of
if you
triceps.
identifying them all, that
Medial
yeah,
head
you
of
can say
triceps.
that that's the triceps. Oh, okay. I think my cursor is gone a little medial. That's right. This is the medial head and this is the triceps tendon. That's fine. Full answers. Okay. So Anconius epitrochlearis can cause compression of which nerve? Choose the correct option.
Please see, they are saying ulnar nerve.
Very good. I think that means most of them have been attentive. Okay. Identify this structure. What's this structure? So the
Supracondylar process. Kasturi, you have written supratrochlear process. Supracondylar process. Now she's written it
yes.
correctly.
Okay, good. Which of the following is the primary restraint to varus stress? This I have emphasized a lot during the entire presentation, so I hope you get it right. So
B,
all these
lateral
ligaments
ulnar
are on the
collateral
lateral.
ligament. They are saying
Yes,
B,
very
lateral
good.
ulnar
So
collateral.
yes, that's good. It's the lateral or the
Anisha
lateral
Banerjee also
ulnar
has learned
collateral
and is
ligament.
writing B.
All your students are doing well, good. Okay, identify this structure. I want you to identify this thin hypointense band, okay? Just in case you think the marker is on the muscle, no, please identify this band-like structure, this dark band.
Anterior band of medial collateral ligament.
Yes, that's right. It's the anterior bundle of the UCL. Good. Which bundle of the ulnar collateral ligament is functionally the most important? Choose the correct option.
A, anterior bundle.
That's very good. So anterior bundle is the most important as compared to the posterior, and transverse bundle doesn't contribute much to stability. It's just connecting the other two bundles, right? No osseous attachment. So let's forget about this. But of these two, the anterior one is most important. Identify the sign in this radiograph. So I told you when I was talking about the fat pads. So what is this sign?
Tail sign, Kasturi Rakshit. Say.
Yes, that's right. It's the sale sign. So as I told you, displacement of the fat pads. So once there is displacement of the olecranon and the coronoid fat pads, that suggests the possibility of an effusion. So on the MR, effusion is obviously very easy to identify. But remember that for musculoskeletal radiology, you must be tuned to reading the radiographs as well. And do not interpret joint scans, MRI scans, without seeing the radiographs of the patient. They will always have something to tell you. Okay, so this is the sales sign. Last question, identify the finding in this image.
Nobody's saying anything.
Okay, so that's okay. So I showed you in the sagittal sections that if this is the brachialis, there has to be a structure anterior to that, and that is the biceps tendon. So what has happened here is the biceps tendon is torn and it is retracted proximally. And when I was telling you about the lacertus fibrosis, I did tell you that if there is a rupture of the lacertus fibrosis, then there is a significant retraction of the biceps tendon. So that's what has happened in this case, and there is a proximal retraction of the biceps tendon. So this is a biceps tendon tear with retraction. So that with that, I come to the last slide of the presentation, and thank you all for your attention. I'm very happy that most of you have got the questions right, except for one, last one, but otherwise it means that you have been paying attention throughout the presentation, and that's good enough for someone who is teaching.
Thank
So
you
if
so
you
much,
have any
Vaishali. They are all
questions.
individually telling you thank you for this session. This has really
Okay,
been
I
made
can't
very
see that,
easy.
but thank you.
I can see
Yes,
they're thanking you from their heart.
thank you.
Thank you
That's
very much.
very
Thank you very much. So with this introduction to the elbow, I think Chaitali's lecture, they will be able to understand better.
yes. I think now Chaitali's lecture they will be really able to grasp very well.
So
That's
over
what
this
is
week,
the
over this
purpose.
week, try to go back to department, take out the elbow scans, and continuously, read the anatomy of each of them, so that by the time the next
Yes.
week lecture comes, you are absolutely well versed with the normal anatomy.
Yes, absolutely. They must do that. Yes.
So thank you,
Thank you,
everyone, and
Srijita.
thank you, Vaishali, very, very much. Thank you, Ready Learn. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh,
Good
Thank
night.
you,
bye,
ma'am.
Good night.
bye, bye.
Bye.